I just thought, if people can see people that look like them, this just makes sense to me. But all the experts said it didn't. So back to me standing there with this investor saying, I don't think people will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. After I went in my car and cried, rejection always still hurts. I also just remember feeling like, wow, he's passing on investing in my business. He's making a business decision because of exactly why I'm starting this company. Like, he's just as much, I don't want to call it a victim, but just as much impacted by the definition of beauty that's out there. And he's literally passing on investing in my company because of it. And so it drove my deep why for like why I was building this company. And I took that rejection as fuel for like, oh, this has got to change, right? And for me, it was like, let me build a company where we show all types of beauty, where it wasn't even just about selling product. It wasn't about solving my own problems. And even though I want to help millions of women and all that, the real why was like, can I shift culture and beauty for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown person who still does.
One of the big things you've done, Bella, my daughter, wants to get into, I think, to my financial company. And I said this to her before I read your work, and that's why I was running in. I want to talk about this topic because when you already don't feel worthy and then you get rejected, oh, wow, right? And you've dealt with so much rejection in your life. You've always had some body image issues in your life. And when Bella decided she wanted to do fun, she got her license and she said, Daddy, I'm going to be great. I'm in sales. I can motivate. And I said, my biggest concern, Bella, is how will you deal with all of the rejection you're going to get? It's the killer in sales, not just life. In sales, if you can't deal with rejection, you're toast. In life, we frame rejection wrong. And you say in the book, I'm going to let you word it your way, but if you can change your relationship with direction, you have these great sayings that people will remember. I'm going to let you say them. But talk about that. You already don't feel worthy, most of us, right? Then rejection comes in. To me, that's like the shovel on the face of burying someone's dreams is rejection. Unless what?
So rejection. So I'm like so emotional.
Yeah, me too.
So emotional.
Me too.
Rejection. Oh my gosh. Yeah. In the book, in Worthy, I go into like 20 tactical tools you can apply to your life right now to build self-worth. And chapter 2, that was almost, it's so tactical. It was its own book.
Yeah.
It was its own book. And I didn't want to wait 2 more years for it to come out. So it's literally now a chapter in Worthy called, when you change your relationship with rejection, you change your entire life. And I go deep in a framework in it called the 4 R's. And this is life changing because, as you know, everything in life is just the meaning we attach to it, right? It's the story we tell ourselves about. It's the meaning we attach to it. It is possible, and I know because I've done it. As you mentioned, like I went years. A lot of people see the success of it cosmetics, but the first 3 years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rejections. Everyone telling me that this wasn't going to make it, saying no, they didn't want me in their stores. Like we almost went bankrupt a number of times. We didn't pay ourselves for over 3 years. I mean, and most of us give up after 1 rejection or 20 rejections, right? I've done a lot of things wrong in building that business, but one of the things I did right was I learned how to change my relationship with rejection and become fearless over it. So really quick, do you want me to take everyone through this framework? Okay, because you could do this with Ed and I right now live. So let me just start with this question, and I want you to answer it honestly, okay? Honestly, when I say imagine yourself getting rejected or you failing at something, what is the first thought you have when you get rejected or you fail at something? And be really honest. Sometimes we think it, we don't even realize we're thinking it. What's that first thought you have when you get rejected or you fail? For me, most of my life, it's like, yep, there's proof I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Proof again, I'm not enough. What has it been for you, Ed?
I'd want to hide.
I want to hide.
Yep. I'd want to hide.
I want to hide.
I want to hide.
You know, when I ask, I've asked small groups this question, and oh my gosh, the things people say just at home to know you're not alone. A lot of people are like, oh, yep, I'm stupid. Yeah. I shouldn't have even tried. What was I even thinking? I'm a loser. I don't have what it takes. I'm unqualified, right? Yeah. Whatever your first thought you just had is, that is the first R called reveal, and it is your current definition of rejection. So whatever that first thought you had is, I want to hide, I'm stupid, I'm a loser, I'm not enough. That is your current definition of rejection. That is the meaning you assign to rejection. And now here's the thing, as human beings, we are wired to avoid pain at all costs, right? Like, it's why for some of us, we won't even go to the gym because we know there's pleasure in the outcome and the health and the wellness, but I don't want the pain of working out. Like, we will avoid pain at all costs in different areas of our life. So if your definition right now at home that you just thought to yourself is painful, and for most of us it is, I'm not enough, I'm a loser, I'm stupid, I shouldn't have tried, I want to hide. If it is painful, you will stay stuck, you won't go for it, like you'll talk yourself out of it because you want to avoid pain. So the second R is to redefine and reframe that definition. But here's the key. Because then, you talk about, I think, scratching a CD. Like, every time your old definition that you just thought of comes to your mind, you intercept it and you replace it with this new true definition. But it has to be true. This is the second R, which is redefine. It has to be true. So a couple examples. Rejection is God's protection.
Love this.
Right? Rejection is God's protection. Now, I believe that is true. You have to believe your new definition is true. I believe that at my core it's true. And then over time, I can look back and go, yep, that was true. Rejection was God's protection.
Give me the one example, if you don't mind, that I know about when you were really, really trying to sign to get equity to sign with this dude, and he basically tells you no, and the reason no is blah blah blah, and like that was a really traumatic moment in your life, but it was actually God protecting you at the same time. So do you mind just showing them that, and then we'll go to the other two R's? But go ahead. This is because they'll remember this the rest of their life.
And by the way, the dude not wanting to date me, exclusively in the health club, that's rejection, a form of rejection.
Yes, sure is.
Which, thank God. I could have just doubted myself out of my whole future. Just gone with him one-on-one off into the sunset.
What a great point.
Right? Rejection's God's protection. The dude that breaks your heart, like all of it, right? The friend that betrays your trust, that doesn't invite you to the party and you don't know why. Rejection is God's protection. So the story you're sharing, oh my gosh, we'd had years and years of rejections, and I finally got this big meeting with a potential investor, huge private equity company. We went to several meetings, got into the diligence phase where we hired lawyers. Like, I thought this deal was going to happen. And Ed, I thought, like, oh my gosh, if he invests in us, then we're not going to go bankrupt. Like, he's going to be my knight in shining armor. And I was putting him on this pedestal, right? And I was like, oh, and it got down to the final meeting. Paulo, who my husband, Paulo was there. We flew up for this. We were in person. I just thought it was going to change my life, and it did, just in a different way. But it came down to the end of the meeting, and this head investor was there, a very famous private equity company. His whole team was there. They were awesome. And at the end, he says to me, you should be so proud. Like, this is a great product. Congratulations. But it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. And I was just like, okay, can you tell me why? Because feedback is usually a gift. And he got really quiet. And he says to me, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I was like, yes, please. And I remember, like, my heart beating in my ears because I was like, why is he not sharing this with me? And I remember the moment his mouth started moving and he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And two things, like, in that moment, I never actually got angry at him, but I remember this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. Like, so it felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye. But when he said that, I remember this feeling, like, in my gut, and I can feel it like it was yesterday, that said, he's wrong. Like, I felt it in my gut, right? And two things. When I look back at that moment, like, that feeling, that intuition, that knowing was so strong that said he's wrong, even though I couldn't prove it. Like, I was not selling much. We were barely in business. I had been getting rejections for years. But when he said those words to me, like, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And that feeling, like what I know, and I can look back at that moment, is that like this dude gave me a no, but God gave me a knowing, like that knowing, right? And so two things happened. I didn't hear from him again for 6 years. Now I went out in my car and cried that day, but I didn't hear from him for 6 more years. And when those thoughts replayed in my mind, you know, when someone says something hurtful to us, we can let it take root in our identity. We can let it think that we're not enough and we need to change who we are. And so I would imagine myself turning down the volume on that no and turning up the volume on my knowing, right? And trusting what I felt like God's word. Like I hear God when I pray through my intuition, through that gut feeling. The other thing I did was I redefined that rejection. Every time I was tempted to think, oh, I'm rejected, I'm not enough, like all the things, like my old story, I'd intercept it, be like, nope, rejection's God's protection. I don't know how, I don't see it yet, but I'm going to believe, because I know in my soul, I believe this to be true, rejection's God's protection. 6 years later,
This is so good.
the day we sold to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion cash, they're a public company, and I didn't know till the night before they were going to announce it publicly, the purchase price, everything. And it was on the homepage of the Wall Street Journal. It was everywhere. And that was the first time I heard from him in 6 years. And he said, congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I was wrong. And
Yeah, you were wrong.
do you remember, Ed, that moment in the movie Pretty Woman where like she goes in the store and they won't help her?
Yes.
And then she goes back the day later, a couple days later.
Yes.
So what I wanted to say to him in that moment was like, big mistake. Huge. I could give you 1.2 billion reasons why. It was a huge mistake. But I didn't. I kept it classy, and I remembered two things. Because here's the deal. Had he invested and believed in me, I was so desperate at the time, we would have given him the majority of the company for like no money. Because he didn't believe in me, like the day we sold the business, we were the largest shareholders. So it's like rejection is God's protection. And there's so many other beautiful definitions. Like one day I was getting, oh my gosh, it was like in the middle of this massive season of rejections. And I started Googling everyone I admire in business and in thought leadership and in who's changed the world as a force for good. And I realized they've all gone through rejections. They're just the brave ones willing to keep going anyways.
So good.
So that was another definition that I put in my toolbox. Is like, okay, you know, sometimes I was like, okay, I just got rejected, but you know what? This is a victory. It means I'm one of the brave ones willing to keep. I'm not sitting on the sidelines. I'm not, you know, in the stands watching everyone else on the field. Like I am one of the ones in the field, not living my life in regret. And so this rejection is a freaking victory because it means I'm one of the brave ones willing to keep going for it, right? Another great definition could be I'm putting in the reps. I'm putting in the reps. I'm getting strong enough to carry the weight of my yes or my success when it happens, right? We start stacking these new definitions. So that's the second R. The third R is my favorite, which I think it's the most powerful, and it's called revisit. It's where we actually revisit old and past rejections and failures in our lives. Pay attention to what definition have I given those, and let me redefine those.
Very good.
And one you and I have talked about a couple times together that I think is just so powerful. And for anyone listening who has had someone betray their trust, had the rug pulled out from under them, has someone who does not see their value or love them like they need to be loved. When I revisit rejections often, I will literally, here's how I define them my favorite way to define them. I will literally imagine God saying to me, like, oh no, you weren't rejected. Like I hid your value from them because they're not assigned to your destiny. And I believe it. And to this day, Ed, even like, you know, I always share everything with you, but like, even if there's a friend that just doesn't, you know, show up for me, even though I always show up for them or whatever it is, like instead of me feeling like, oh, something's wrong with me, which would be my old default definition, I'm like, okay, God's hiding my value from them because they're not assigned to my destiny. And I lean on that. And then it doesn't take root in my spirit. It doesn't, you know, take root in my self-worth. I become more fearless in going after things and putting myself out there. And the fourth R is revel.
How did you look at your rejections as a good thing?
I love this question because honestly, I feel like people don't share this enough.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now we see social media, we see everyone's highlight reel, we see all the outcomes. It's really why I wrote this book, to be honest, because like if you Google my name, you see like, oh, Denny's waitress to billion-dollar entrepreneur. And I get so many DMs, especially from women, Lewis, so many DMs from people saying like, oh, did you get lucky? Or was that easy? Or did you have connections? And it's like, oh, wow. If we don't share the rejections and like the real story and the real journey, then I feel like people feel like they're alone in their own rejection and their own pain and all that. So yeah, it was, my journey has been filled with hundreds of no's, tons of rejection. And I feel like figuring out how to not take it personal has been huge on the business side of things. It's always hurt, to be honest. It's always hurt. But also, I believe, and no matter if someone believes in God or the universe or whatever, when I look back at everything I've gone through, especially this last 10-year window, there's a famous saying, rejection's God's protection. You could say rejections is the universe's protection, right? Whatever applies to each person listening, but like I believe it. And it's, I mean...
So that person shouldn't have said yes to you. It wouldn't have been the right fit for you.
Wouldn't have been the right fit. I mean...
Or the right timing or whatever.
And what's hard, and here's the hardest thing, is so many people actually like never step out of their comfort zone because they're so afraid of rejection, because it freaking hurts. It sucks when it happens, right? And sometimes it doesn't make sense and it doesn't feel fair. And I remember, you know, gosh, one rejection out of hundreds in my journey, because, you know, I thought I was going to be a news anchor and a talk show host my whole career. I love other people's stories. Like I just want to interview you right now. It's like since the time I was a little girl, it's all I wanted to do. And I was working in my dream job as a news anchor, and I started getting this skin condition called rosacea, which is bright red, and there's like bumps and all kinds of stuff. And I thought I was going through this big setback in my career, and I would be anchoring the live news, and I'd hear from the producer in my ear, like, there's something on your face, there's something on your face. And I'd be live, and they were like, you need to wipe it off, you need to wipe it off. And I knew...
Then it'd probably get worse.
Yeah, because the stress.
It's like flaring up more, you're like, ah!
I'm like, and I knew there wasn't anything I could wipe off. And I started going through this season of self-doubt where I started thinking, okay, am I going to lose my job? Or am I going to lose viewers? Is my boyfriend still going to think I'm cute? Like all those thoughts that we tell ourselves. And I started thinking I was in this like big setback, but what it was really was a setup for what I was supposed to do. Right. And I think so often our setbacks are setups. It's just hard to see it at the time. And I started, you know, trying every makeup out there, from the most expensive to the least, to everything. I couldn't find anything that works. And I made this decision to literally leave my dream job. Like, I think sometimes knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after one. And I feel like so many people are always like, just don't give up, just don't quit. But I actually think that doesn't always apply. I think that like the victory is knowing when to hear yourself and trust yourself and let go of a dream or step into one. But what I didn't know is stepping into that dream would be faced with 3 years of constant rejection. So from the moment I quit my job and my husband and I wrote our business plan on our honeymoon flight to South Africa, got back, like dove all in, put everything we had into a product. And once we finally had a product that worked for me, I just thought like, oh, it's going to sell. It's just going to do well, right? And it was literally 3 years of every single beauty retailer, like all the ones I loved and the ones I thought, oh my gosh, like I put them on a pedestal and I thought, oh, they're going to love this because it works, you know? And so I would send it to Sephora and Ulta and QVC, all the places, and they all said, like every one of them said no.
For 3 years. For
3 years. We got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was our company and personal combined. Literally, it was no after no. And I mean, one no that stands out, just to share this, because anyone listening, part of, you know, your greatness community, like dealing with rejection, dealing with setbacks, dealing with, it's hard. When you check in with your gut, you feel like you're supposed to be going after this dream or creating something or launching the podcast or creating the product or whatever. It's hard when you feel like it's the right thing, but then there's no proof of success around you.
No one's buying into it.
No one's buying into it. And then your own self-doubt starts taking over, right? And when you have experts telling you they don't believe in what you're doing, that's hard. And I remember one moment in particular when we got interest from a private equity firm. And I was so excited because we had had so many no's. And I thought, okay, if they invest in us, and this was a big private equity firm, they invest in a lot of like consumer product companies that we see at the grocery store, like household names, right? And they invest in a lot of them pre-revenue, and then they become big companies. And I'm like, oh, if they invest in us, A, I won't go bankrupt. B, maybe they can use their leverage to get us into these stores that are telling us no, they don't want our product. And so we started the meeting process with the investors and went through the diligence phase and presented our product pipeline and showed our budgets. And I'll never forget the final meeting. And my husband, Paulo, who he was there. And then the head investor was like 3 feet from me. And I thought it was going to be a yes. Like I was so excited. And he literally was like, thank you. We're really, we want to congratulate you on your product. We think that it's awesome. We want to wish you the best, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And I was like, okay, can you tell me why, right? Because feedback's usually a gift, not always. And I was like, can you tell me why? And he looked at me, and he's literally 3 feet from me, and he says, do you really want me to be honest with you? I said, yes, please. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight, right? And so this was a moment. When he said that, I don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. It was this moment where I was looking at him, right? And it was almost like watching his lips move in slow motion. And I remember 2 big things from this. I remember my whole body flooded with a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt.
And God doubt, you say.
Yeah, God, everything. But it felt like I was staring my fear straight in the eye. It was almost like it wasn't even about him in this moment. And I knew that 2 things. I remember that, and I remember this moment in my gut that told me, even though I was in pain at the time and it hurt, and this was a big rejection, I also felt this really strong moment of feeling like he's wrong, a knowing, a deep knowing. But I also knew that if I was ever going to prove that, I would also have to truly believe it. You know what I mean? And it was tough. I went to my car and cried, and didn't know what we were going to do. But one thing and I did a lot of things wrong in my journey, and I share those in the book, but one thing that I did right was through all the rejections, I actually never took them personal. And with him, I felt no anger toward him. And I had this big moment. So 2 big things happened. And then I want to tell you the full circle. The whole rejection's God's protection, and rejection's the universe's protection. I have to tell you what happened. This is for anyone listening going through a setback or rejection right now, because I have hundreds of stories like this. Now, after building this company and hiring over 1,000 employees and all the stuff that we've done on the way. Okay, so 2 things. One is when I was creating this company, right? And you hear about you've had people on your show talking about finding your why and finding your mission and all that kind of thing. And everyone knows about that, or a lot of people have read about it. And I think knowing your why is important for any goal or any dream. But 2 things happened. When I created the brand, and I was like, why can't I find any product that works? I don't understand this. This is when I was working as a news anchor. I had this moment where I realized, oh my gosh, my whole life, even when I was a little girl growing up, all I ever saw was TV ads or magazine ads. I loved them. I loved them, and I always saw the models, and I always aspired to look that way. But they all always had flawless skin. I never saw anybody that had rosacea or any type of challenges. And I realized 2 things, that I always had aspired to look like them, but they also always made me feel not enough, because
you could never look like them.
Yeah, what was called beautiful, I didn't see myself in, right? And so I had this whole idea, which is part of why all the retailers were saying no in the early years. I had this idea to not just create products that work, but let me show models, all different people, every age, skin tone, skin challenge, gender identity, skin problems, size. Like, let me just show real people and prove this product works. Like, let me go on QVC and prove it live. Let me show my own rosacea. And I just thought, if people can see people that look like them, this just makes sense to me. But all the experts said it didn't. So back to me standing there with this investor saying, I don't think people will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. After I went in my car and cried, rejection always still hurts. I also just remember feeling like, wow, he's passing on investing in my business. He's making a business decision because of exactly why I'm starting this company. Like, he's just as much, I don't want to call it a victim, but just as much impacted by the definition of beauty that's out there. And he's literally passing on investing in my company because of it. And so it drove my deep why for like why I was building this company. And I took that rejection as fuel for like, oh, this has got to change, right? And for me, it was like, let me build a company where we show all types of beauty, where it wasn't even just about selling product. It wasn't about solving my own problems. And even though I want to help millions of women and all that, the real why was like, can I shift culture and beauty for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown person who still does. And so like that drive fueled it. And not being afraid of rejection is so huge. And it's really huge for women because it prevents a lot of people from even trying. And it hurts. It always sucks. It never feels fun. But I got rejected so many times on this journey. And to finish this thought about how rejection's God's protection. So the day this dude tells me this, right? Fast forward 6 years. And the day that L'Oreal bought our business for $1.2 billion cash, it was all over. They had to announce it because they're a public company. So it was on the Wall Street Journal homepage. It was everywhere. And I got an email from him.
You?
He emailed me.
Wow, what did he say?
I got an email. He said, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I was wrong. And
had you stayed in touch in those 6 years?
Not with him. With everyone else that rejected me, though, I did often. Because I was always like, it's going to be a yes. It's going to be a yes. With him, here's, and this was 6 years, right, until this moment happened. But what I realized that day is, when we talk about like rejection is protection, I was so desperate in those moments when I wanted him to invest that we probably would have sold him the majority of the company for like no money, because he didn't believe in us. Two things. We found out we would have been his most successful investment in his firm's history. But then also like, by the time, because he didn't believe in us, and also we got a lot more rejection on the way, by the time that L'Oreal acquired our company, we were still the largest shareholders. So it was like, okay. So I was so glad he didn't believe in me then. But when rejection happens, it's not easy to see it in that moment. It always does hurt, but I always believe.
There's so much there, and I want you to keep going. A couple things I want to unpack there. Number one is this unrealistic image for women. It's really interesting. With men, it really isn't that way. If you look at football, Tom Brady has a few ads. He's the good-looking dude, right? He's got a watch ad or whatever. But the guy that got all the ads was Peyton Manning. It was the everyman when it comes to men. With women, these unrealistic images, especially in the beauty industry, for the most part, are the images that we see. And so you really did revolutionize an industry. That's number one. Number two, it's interesting to me that your dream was to be a broadcaster. I got to tell you, we both bagged groceries at Safeways, and I was a broadcasting major in college, and that was my dream. I didn't know it was going to show up 30 years later, after my entrepreneurial journey. But I think life starts after your first dream goes away. I really believe that's where you're defined. And I'm so curious about this journey with the rejection. I have a philosophy. I don't know if you agree with this. I love the title of your book, Believe It, because what you're talking about, turning up this volume on your inner voice and turning down the external rejections. Those rejections you got were over and over again. I was telling my son this, who thinks he wants to be an entrepreneur. He said, Dad, what's one of the things that most people wouldn't tell you? I said, I don't know, that maybe the most important thing is your ability to deal with rejection as an entrepreneur. We talk about vision, we talk about, communication, but can you deal with the rejection? And in your case, it broke my heart, but there was one meeting you had where you thought you had a deal finally, right? With this VC guy. And I want you guys just to feel the depth of the rejection that you may experience as an entrepreneur. And could you do what Jamie did and still push back? So picture years and years of rejection. You're running out of cash. You're working out of your living room. Everyone's telling you no. And then this dude almost says yes, but then really hits you with a hard no. Tell him about that.
Yeah. And I thought literally he was going to be my saving grace, right? Because again, we were down to no money and we got interest from a private equity company and they loved our products. Our product worked, like it really worked. So they loved the product and they wanted to have meetings. So we started going down that path and, they were really big. I mean, they are really big. They've invested in a ton of consumer product companies that you and I buy at the grocery store. And, they made a lot of them household names from nothing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if they invest, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they'll help get me into all these retail stores that keep telling me no and keep telling me I'm not the right fit and all that. And so, we did meeting after meeting and we started the diligence phase, which is, where you show all your projections, your product pipeline, everything. And it got down to the last meeting and my husband, Paulo, and I flew up for it. And I thought, like, this is it. Like, this is going to be it. And I'll never forget the head guy was standing about 3 feet from me. And he thanked me. He said, that we should be proud of the product we created. And then he says to me, and he's about 3 feet from me, face to face. And he says, so I want to let you know it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And I said, okay, like I'm used to hearing no at this point, right? And I'm like, all right, well, can you tell me why? Because usually feedback is a gift, usually. And I'm like, can you tell me why? And he's like, do you want me to be really honest? And I said, yeah. And I'll never forget, like, I remember just like him looking at me for a minute and I remember feeling my heart racing really fast. And then I remember seeing his lips move in slow motion. And he basically said, he did say straight to my face, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight.
Oh, wow.
And I remember it was this moment where for me, it was almost like this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt kind of like flooded my body and almost felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye, listening to him. And I knew I had to keep my faith bigger than it. But Ed, in that moment, like, it's wild. I actually, it hurt. Like I literally went in my car in the parking lot and cried my eyes out. Those things hurt. But what stands out to me in that moment, and I actually never felt, I didn't get mad at him. I still am not mad at him. Because guess what? The whole reason, that whole why beneath the why on why I was doing this company, like he literally passed on investing in my company because he had the exact same mindset, right? That everyone else does about what you have to look like, the box you have to fit into to be successful. And he's just as much I don't want to say victim, byproduct maybe of the whole beauty industry too. He's passing on an investment in my company because of my weight. And I remember this moment, but the thing that sticks out to me most is in this moment, I had this feeling, this deep feeling, like as he's telling me this, that he's wrong. And I had that feeling, but I knew nothing yet that I had done proved that because I had no sales yet really. And I also knew like proving it would first and foremost hinge on me believing it for myself. And, fast forward. And by the way, in the years after that, like it's discipline of recognizing when someone else's voice is playing in your head all of a sudden. And I listened to a show you did actually where you scratch it and that's what I have to do over and over. Like I'd have to literally get really good at turning down the volume on those things because, and I want to tell you a full circle moment that happened. It was so good. But like, I feel like that, what you just shared about telling your son this advice, right? I feel like that's everything because I feel like so many people, what ends up happening is everyone else's rejections, right, end up like equating to self-doubt in our own head. our own self-doubt about ourselves. We start to turn the volume up on that to the point where with all of it, with everyone else's opinions, and in my case, the lack of success around me, it can get so loud that we can't even hear our own internal knowing anymore. And I feel like so many people, and then you have your friends and your family, like they mean the best, but they're seeing you through their own lens of fear and inexperience, right? And so between all of it, so many people, I feel like, end up literally talking themselves out of their own calling and talking themselves out of their own truth and staying in their comfort zone at like the cost of it chipping away at their soul. We've all done this. And literally missing out on the person they're born to be. And I feel like and my story is like years and years and years of rejection. But when I look back at the things I did wrong and the things I did right, usually like my biggest mistakes came down to when I actually didn't listen to something I knew in my gut. And I decided to go with something an expert had told me when it didn't feel like quite right. And the biggest successes are when I really listened to that knowing, even when it went against what other people told me. So like, this guy telling me this, had I changed who I was, right, and tried to fit some mold that he said would sell, if that was who I was authentically, then great. But it's not for me, right? And so had I ever conformed to him or any of those retailers that told me change this, change that, and maybe we'll bring you into our store, or L'Oreal that for 3 years of meetings said no, and all the things I needed to do differently. Had I listened to most of any of that, especially the parts that didn't align with my gut instinct, I would have never sold my company for over $1 billion. I probably would be out of business. So that's
you hear yourself when you say this, Jamie, where you're like, I would have never sold my company for $1 billion. Still, when that comes out of your mouth, is there a part of you like, I sold my company for over $1 billion? Does it still hit you a little bit?
On one hand, I still can't process it. On the other hand, you'll understand this when I say this, and you won't judge me for saying this. And I believe actually everyone in your community, I believe they're part of your community because they'll understand this too. Selling your company for $1 billion is exciting, but like for me, I don't feel like I'm put on this earth to compete with anyone else. I feel like I'm put on this earth to compete with who God made me capable of becoming.
Amen.
And I feel like I'm just getting started. Like I'm not there yet. So selling a company for $1 billion is exciting, but like, I feel like stepping into all of who I am and serving and giving and all the things I'm really called to do, I still feel like I'm not there yet. By the way, you talked about—
I feel like having watched you speak a couple times and then listening now, I feel like all of that happened, all of the struggle, all of the ups and downs, all of the selling of the company, all you've learned, all you've been able to articulate, your broadcast background, all of that stuff is leading you right now to your time. Like, I think you are called for what you're doing now, which is teaching and inspiring people and giving them hope. However, you did say it came full circle. Yeah. What did you mean when you said that? What's the full circle?
Ed. Okay, you love this. Okay, so this is so good because I actually never got mad at him, right? Because for me, it was like something bigger than him. Yeah. So fast forward a few years, and when we actually ended up selling to L'Oreal, it was their largest U.S. acquisition in their history, and so it made the homepage of Wall Street Journal, a bunch of stuff like that. And the day that the deal was announced, I got an email from him, and he said, congratulations, I was wrong, so proud of you. That whole thing he did, and also I learned that it would. So two things. I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history. But here's the thing, and this is where our setbacks, I feel like, oh my gosh, our setbacks, even when they suck, like it sucked to hear him say those words to me. It hurt. I cried. Like it hurts, right? Rejection in almost any form basically says to us, you're not enough. You don't belong. You're not worth, I don't think I will make money off you, or I don't believe in you, or it comes in all those forms, and it sucks. But I really believe, even almost all the time, when I look back at almost all the rejections, I feel like that, like, again, those setbacks really are our setups, and sometimes rejection is really like serendipitous grace, wrapped in this package labeled painful rejection. And what I mean by that is, I was so desperate at the time. I think you just posted, I just saw your thing where you're like, scarcity is value. Yeah. So yeah, I had no scarcity back then. I would have given him like any part of my company. We were down to under $1,000 in our bank account. I didn't know how we were going to survive. Had he wanted to invest, had he said yes to us that day, I would probably give him the majority of the company for probably almost no money, just hoping to survive. But because he didn't believe in me, and because we got so much rejection along the way, when we ended up selling to L'Oreal 8 years into the business, I was still the largest shareholder.
That's awesome.
And so, right?
I love this. Serendipitous grace. I may steal that from you. That is beautiful. And you guys have to say something. That's why you want to get this book. It's loaded with information like this. It's loaded with stories like this about believing it. Why do you need to believe it? Let's just unpack this rejection thing, and then we're going to get to a magic moment. The reason that I think your ability to deal with rejection is so important, it's not talked about enough. Let's just be honest. You know why 99.9% of dreams die, everybody? You eventually get too much rejection. So if that's the thing that's going to cause you not to get your dream, 99.9% of the time, it's just there becomes a threshold that people don't take the rejection long enough. So they don't stick around to receive the grace. And so if that is true, if we already know that going in, then why not pre-negotiate in the very beginning what price you're willing to pay? Hopefully it's anything, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, so that the 99.9% of the reasons why your dream won't happen, you've already set in your favor if you've just decided you'll take the rejection. That's why it's such a big part. How do you take the rejection? You got to believe it. And that's why this book is so powerful. So we lead to this point, guys. And again, the beautiful thing about Jamie's story is it's her vulnerabilities and her authenticity that made the brand relevant, all the way up to the extreme magic moment. Don't hide your insecurities. Don't hide your blemishes, guys, figuratively and literally in your entrepreneurial journey. Get people wanting to root for you. Your fears and insecurities are what connect you with the marketplace. Ironically, you don't have to hide them. You can work on them, but there's nothing wrong with saying I have them. So finally, somehow, you get this moment on QVC, right? And you are so brilliant in this moment. You ask them, I'll let you tell the story, but to me, it's like, if you don't do this thing, again, maybe it still doesn't hit all the way to the last second, the last moment. It was your vulnerability that connected you with the audience.
You know, here's a big one for me is changing my relationship with rejection. Yes. And this is, you know, for every person listening, when you change and watching us too, when you change your relationship with rejection, you change your entire life.
Yeah.
You change your entire life. And I think, you know, fear of failure and rejection kills so many dreams. Mm-hmm. It keeps us stuck. Mm-hmm. And you know, this was huge for me. And so just to take everyone through a tactical, let's just go there. Let's do a tactical exercise right now, because this is something that outside of this episode, you're going to want to reapply it, spend more time on it, do the work on it. But just right now, as you're listening or watching us, answer this question to yourself super honestly, super honestly. When you fail at something or get rejected, what is the first thought that goes through your head? Very first thought. When you fail at something or get rejected, what's the first thought that goes through your head? For me, most of my whole life, it's, oh, yep, there's proof again. I'm not enough.
Yep.
I'm not enough.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah? Is that yours then?
Yes.
Same?
Yep.
Right now, whatever your thought that just came to your mind, right? That your instant truth, first response, that is your current definition of rejection, right? So for me, it's, there's proof I'm not enough, right? For a lot of people, it's something like, oh, yep, I'm not smart enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm stupid. I'm, X, Y, or Z. I didn't go to the right school. I didn't come from the right family. I don't have what it takes. It's because of my weight. It's whatever it might be, right? We all have this definition of rejection. And I want you to just take note of yours right now, because this is really powerful. Don't skip over this. This one thing will change your life. If you take note of what is your current definition of rejection. For me, it's I'm not enough, right? And
can I tell you what mine's more specifically?
Yeah.
Just a little bit more refined, because I want to meet you in the middle on it. I think mine is like, I don't belong here.
Yes.
So it's slightly different, but like, I don't belong here. I don't know. I think there's probably some things where when I was a kid, my dad was like, we don't belong. But if I get into an environment, I don't belong here. If it's a big stage to speak on, or a room that I'm in, or people that are smarter than me, I don't belong here. I feel like I just physically, literally don't belong. Or even different things I've achieved, or levels, or like the first time I even walked into a country club I wanted to join. I don't belong here. They don't know the real me. Like, I don't belong here. And so I just want to give the phraseology from me. Maybe it could be male, female. It could be just person to person that's different.
Yes.
Keep going. I interrupted you, but I just wanted to add that.
That's so good. I think that sheds a lot of light too because get granular with, for everyone joining us with it right now, just get granular on what that is for you, and by the way, I have another thing. I hope we have time. I want to dive deep on what you just said. I'm going to dive deep in that in a minute with a whole other tactic.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I don't belong here. That's huge, right? I don't belong here. I'm not enough. And at our core, we all want to feel like we're enough and will be loved, right? We all need love and belonging. We all need to be seen and heard and know that we matter. And at our core, that's a huge one.
Did you have the belonging thing? I wonder, because you didn't, your birth mom gave you up real early, right? So like, did you, or did your the mother who raised you make you feel like you belonged immediately, or did you struggle with that at all?
I have struggled with that my whole life.
Have you?
Yeah. Not feeling like I fit in, not feeling I belong, feeling I'm different.
Yes. And maybe you are different, and maybe that's a good thing. It doesn't mean you don't belong, but I am different. You are different. I know you. By the way, those of you that are listening, you are different. That's why you're individually you.
Yes.
Right? That's the thing that makes you different is your special sauce.
Yes.
Not the thing that eliminates you from the room or the environment. It's what makes you special to add something to your family, add something to a company, add something to another human being. Is these different things about you? So anyhow, you're going down your strategy.
And to add to that, it's your superpower. If you are showing up in this world as your authentic self, by definition, you've never been done before. There's never been another you. And we think the thing that is different or quirky or awkward about us is what's wrong with us, but it's actually the thing that's right with us, right? And I don't want to get off on a huge tangent, but like, had I not embraced all the crap that was technically wrong with me, I could have never built $1 billion company. Like, rosacea is considered a flaw. It's considered something wrong with me. And it's like when I finally started to embrace it and share it and step into it, right? That's when other people felt seen. I was like, oh, me too. And I have skin challenges or this or that or whatever. And it's like, there's a whole chapter in Worthy about this idea of how you're not crazy, you're just first.
I love this.
You're not crazy, you're just first.
Yes.
And oh gosh, okay, I could talk about that for hours, but the lessons around this will change your life. It's why this book just came through me. I'm donating 100% of the proceeds. I'm not even doing this to sell books, but this book will change your life, and I'm so fired up about it. But to get real tactical, back there. So we just did our new definition, your current definition of rejection, which for me is like, proof again, I'm not enough. For Ed is, I don't belong here, right? And take note of what yours is that came to your mind right now. And step one of literally changing your entire life. Again, when I believe this through my core, when you change your relationship with rejection, you change your entire life, your business, your family, your relationships, your goals and dreams, ever stepping into your calling. So I want you to come up with a new definition of rejection that you are going to believe is true and remind yourself of every time it happens. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of this. So, for example, when I went through years of hundreds and hundreds of no's and rejections building It Cosmetics, and I would sit there, Ed, and I would Google all of my greatest heroes or people I thought I had so much respect for. And as I would read their stories, I'm like, oh, they've all gone through tons of rejections in their life, right? Every single one of them, right? And I came to this realization that the people who succeed the most are also the people who fail the most, because they're the people who try the most and keep going. And so I started telling myself this new definition of rejection, which is, ooh, it's a victory. It means I'm one of the brave ones willing to go for it.
Yes.
And I started telling myself that every time I call a new retailer on the phone and they're like, oh, no, you're not the right fit for us or this or that or whatever. And it would hurt my feelings. It's not that I was immune to being hurt or whatever. But I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm one of the brave ones willing to go for it, which means eventually I'm going to succeed. And I started seeing rejection in this weird way as a positive thing. Another definition that I use a lot is rejection is God's protection.
Yes.
Right? And I use this one a lot, and there are more in my own life, in my own head, right? This is something I tell myself over and over. You know, there's more stories than I can count where I'm like, and by the way, you know, well, one example is at cosmetics. I mean, there was one investor midway through the journey that said, you know, he passed on investing. And I thought we were down to almost bankrupt, right? We had under $1,000 in our account, which was the company and our personal, which meant we had a few weeks left before we went bankrupt. And everything was on the line. And I had this big meeting with a potential investor. And you know the story, Ed, but
it's so unbelievable.
At the end, you know, he passed on investing. And I really was thinking he was going to be like my saving grace. And he said that he didn't think women would buy makeup from someone who looked like me with my body and my weight. And it was a whole thing. And
Wait a second. Hang on. Did you all just hear what she said? Okay, I want you to imagine you struggle with worthiness issues. You've been building this company forever. I just want to make sure, because I think what you're about to tell them, the belief system that you took from it, could change the world. So the first thing is, I want to go back.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not crazy. You're just first. I want everyone to just digest that. I want you to hear what this woman said. Who knows about this stuff? You are not crazy to be pursuing your dream.
Yeah.
You're just first.
Yep.
And you're probably first in your family, which is why they're the ones who think you're the craziest. You need to accept this.
Yep.
Okay? There's a profound... Jamie has this ability to say profound, deep things over and over again, hundreds of them, and she doesn't know. You are not crazy. You're just first. And your family's probably not going to get it. And even in your own company, maybe they're not going to get it. And so that's okay. The second thing is, this woman's struggling with worthiness all of her life. She's getting rejected like crazy, up and down. She's also struggled, one of her worthiness issues is she had rosacea. She's struggled with body issues all of her life, if we're going to get really real with Jamie, okay? She's had body issues. So imagine your biggest insecurity is probably that. It's physical, okay? She's this gorgeous, you know, beautiful woman, but she doesn't know it. And so her number one insecurity is probably her body issue, at least operating out in the real world. She goes into this meeting needing it. She's down to $1,000. He not only rejects her, he says to you, I'll let you say it again, he tells her the very reason I'm rejecting you is the very thing you think about yourself the most deeply. I want you to imagine this. So go ahead.
Yes. And we had gone through meeting after meeting. We went through the diligence phase. We were so close with this potential investor who was the head of a private equity company. And in the final meeting, it was in person, so he's about 3 feet from me. Paulo, my husband, was on the other side, and he says, you know, congratulations. You should be so proud of this product and what you've built, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing. And when I said, can you tell me why? It's usually feedback's a gift. And he got very quiet. And he said, you want me to be really honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And two things though, Ed, okay, because rejections and the pain that they cause can take us out. They can take us down. They can take us out. We can keep replaying them over and over and over in our heads. And by this point, I had so many rejections. This was just one that I thought was going to be my saving grace, that had he said yes. And I remember after I cried in my car, I remember telling myself rejection is God's protection. And I don't know how this is going to be God's protection. I don't see it now. It doesn't make sense to me now. I needed it to be a yes now, but I'm going to choose to believe that, because if I don't believe that, it's going to take me down. I'm not going to get back up and keep going and embracing more rejection and more rejection and more rejection and more rejection, right? And here's what ended up happening. I didn't hear from that guy for 6 years. The day that L'Oreal bought my company for $1.2 billion cash, because they are a public company, it was all over the press, right? Homepage of the Wall Street Journal, everywhere. That was the first time I heard from that potential. In 6 years, he said, congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I was wrong.
Gosh.
And what I wanted to say to him, Ed, was, did you ever see Pretty Woman?
Yes, because the character's Edward. Of course I saw Pretty Woman. I love that movie.
So when they wouldn't help her in the store, and then she goes back later, what I wanted to say to him was, big mistake. Huge. huge. I can give you 1.2 billion reasons why it was a huge mistake. But I kept it classy. I didn't say that. But here's my point in this. Had he invested, it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history. But guess what? I was so desperate at the time, Ed. we probably would have given the majority of the company for almost no money, right? Because he didn't believe in me. When we sold to L'Oreal, I was the largest shareholder. So it's like rejection is God's protection, and sometimes we don't see it when it happens. And so that's one.
Can we say something on that too?
Yeah.
Okay. So because her and I talk about these things all of the time. First of all, it's one of the most unbelievable stories ever, and I've heard it many times. A few weeks ago, I went to watch Jamie speak. I'm in the front row. Obviously, I'm rooting for my friend. But I got emotional again. I started crying again. And actually, right now, if I'm not careful, I will, because I'm picturing this woman who all of her life has struggled with worthiness. And then to have someone hit you right where he's hit. But rejection is God's protection is one of the fundamental beliefs I've never heard said before, that if you adapt and adopt that belief in your life, it will change your life. Here's how much your relationship with rejection matters. My children, both, you get that stage, Max and Bella. Both of them are, hey, they're in college, you're getting ready for their careers. And Max's son said, maybe I'll follow in your footsteps, Dad, get into sales in the beginning. And I said, Max, the whole key, if you're going to go into business for yourself, is your ability to deal with rejection. It's the number one thing. Can you deal with rejection? And what's the story you tell yourself? Because it's not the stories of our life, the events of our life that define it. It's the meaning we attach to it. Our friend Erwin McManus had a great post I saw today, by the way, Jamie, where he said, emotions only store in our body when they're attached to a story. So if there's no story, you've had a lot of emotions in your life that don't stick because you didn't attach a story to it. But when you attach a story to it, so that story you tell yourself. So you take it a step further. This is an all-time moment on podcast she's about to give you, just so you know, guys, okay? So not only is rejection God's protection, but what else did you eventually uncover that you realized about what God was doing on your behalf in that rejection in terms of hiding something from him? You guys listen. Your life's about to change in this next 1 minute right here, because if you can adapt this true belief system, it's not only a belief, it's a truth about your life. Your life's about to be very different, including mine the first time I heard it. So go for it.
Yeah. If you're someone that, you are holding on to pain from a past relationship, a past failure, mistakes that you've made, someone who did you wrong, the job you didn't get, the thing that's not going your way, whatever it might be, the partner that screwed you over, whatever it is, right? This definition of rejection is probably the most common one I applied in my life right now, almost every single day, Ed, because sometimes, you know what? A friend doesn't invite you to coffee or include you in a group, and it hurts your feelings, right? Whatever it might be. This is now what I believe most commonly when rejection happens in my life. I imagine my creator, God, saying, oh, no, you weren't rejected. I hid your value from them because they're not assigned to your destiny. And I believe that, right? When things don't go my way right now, when someone, doesn't give me the thing or want me there or include me in the room, whatever it might be, or doesn't get me for some reason. Have you ever tried to make someone you want to connect with them so bad, you want them to like you and they just don't? Whatever it might be, I believe this through my core, and it has changed my life, that I always now hear God saying to me, oh, no, you're not rejected. You weren't rejected. I hid your value from them because they're not assigned to your destiny.
It's one of the all-time greatest things I've ever heard, and I wish every human being could hear it. And I hope you share this, everybody, this episode.
Yeah.
I want my daughter to know that. I want my daughter to know it so badly that when you walk in a room and a boy doesn't notice you like you like them to, or you don't get invited to something, or you get rejected in a sale down the road in your life, or if you're in a relationship and somebody leaves you, God had started to hide your value from them.
Yes.
And I'm telling you at 52, and Jamie can tell you as a much younger woman than I am, but having a lot of success in her life, it is so profoundly true that that's what God's doing. He is protecting you in that moment by either hiding your value or taking the perception of your value away when they once did. And sometimes in life, to get you out of a relationship or out of a company or out of a job you have and you've been fired. You've been fired. Maybe they used to value and now they don't. And God's removed that value from them to protect you.
Yes.
It's so beautifully true. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to say it.
True. Yeah. And I love what you said earlier. Share this episode with anyone who needs to hear this.
You have nothing but closed doors in front of you.
Yes.
And a ton of product and no money.
Yes.
What is the turning point?
Yes.
Why did you not give up?
Yeah. So 2 big things happened. The first was in the form of a crazy, painful rejection. So I thought, Mel, so we got a call from a big potential investor
Okay.
and very famous for launching all these sort of unknown brands and making them big products we all buy in grocery stores. And, and I thought, and they got a hold of our product. And I thought like, oh, if they invest, then A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, like we can leverage their clout to get in these stores that keep telling me no.
Yeah.
Like I had this whole scenario planned out that was like this Pretty Woman moment, right? Where I was like, oh, he's gonna save the day. And so we started taking meeting after meeting, it got down to the final meeting with this huge investment firm, and it was in person. My husband and I actually flew to the meeting. And the head guy was about 3 feet from me.
Yeah.
And his whole team was there, who was awesome. I had just presented our whole future product pipeline. And he says, you should be so proud of this product you've created. It's really, really good. But it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And I was like, okay, can you tell me why? Because I'm so used to hearing no. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, even though really I was devastated, but
Well, yeah, because they just led you on and you just went through it. And this was supposed to be the meeting where they're like, let's do this.
and I was so hopeful and I was so desperate.
Yeah.
And he got very quiet and he says to me, do you want to know, I said, can you tell me why? And he says to me, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he got really quiet and he's like 3 feet from me in person. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And when he said that to me, and this is why it was such a big moment for me, when he said that to me, first of all, a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. Like I remember it flooding my body all at once. And when I looked at him, I actually felt no anger toward him. I felt like I was almost like staring my own fear straight in the eye. But when he said those words to me, Mel, and this is when we talk about purpose and intuition, he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup for someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. The second he said that, I felt this feeling in my gut. Like I can remember it like it was yesterday, this like strong feeling that said, he's wrong. Like I felt it, right? And I didn't know how I was going to prove it, but I felt that feeling. And what I realized later when I look back at that moment, this dude gave me a no, but God gave me a knowing in that moment. And I believe every one of us has had someone tell us we're not the right fit or no, or you don't have what it takes. Sometimes we're the ones telling ourselves that.
I don't love you anymore.
Yes, right? But if you get still and you learn to hear your knowing, I believe which one you listen to. If you listen to the no, all the no's, all the rejections, all the self-doubt, or you get still and listen to your knowing, whether that's from your own intuition, from your creator, from the universe, whatever speaks to you, but we all have it. And I believe our life and our purpose and our entire destiny comes down to which one we listen to. Do you listen to the no or do you listen to the knowing?
Okay, I promised a masterclass. That right there is worth $1 billion. In life, are you going to listen to the no? Or are you going to listen to the knowing inside of you? That's it.
Yeah.
As somebody who loves you and as your friend, when you shared that story with me and hearing you tell it again right now, I literally go, I'm going to kill that motherfucker. I go, I have that, my knowing goes, oh yeah? Oh yeah? You think, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me show you. Like it's that, like I get that sort of mojo thing going when somebody says no like that at a moment like that. It's like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
And I guess I just got in this moment, sort of this wake up call that my knowing often feels like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
You missed out. You'll be sorry. What does yours sound like?
And it's almost always true. That's almost always true, right?
What does yours sound
So,
like? So is yours
yep.
like, or is it more of like,
I mean, in that case, I was devastated and at the same time had this strong, it was just a peace. Honestly, in that moment, it was a peace. He's wrong. And that didn't make sense in my head. Why? Because I had had 3 years of hundreds of rejections. And this is the thing, right? Jay-Z says the genius thing we did was we didn't give up. That's like one of my favorite quotes of his. In that moment, everything told me to give up, Mel. I mean, it was hundreds of rejections. And now what felt like my last hope of desperation told me something totally different. No, because not only do I not believe in anything you're doing necessarily, but I actually just think you're personally not the right fit. Like women just won't buy makeup from. It was just like, oh my gosh, it was like all of these no's everywhere. And I want to share that because it's easy for someone to go, oh, wow, she built $1 billion company. She must have just got lucky. Or maybe she just had so many connections. Or we always think, but really what it comes down to sometimes, in this case, that big moment for me, do you listen to the no's or you listen to the knowing, right?
yeah.
And I made that decision that day to trust the knowing, to trust myself. I kept feeling like I was supposed to keep going. I didn't know how, right? And
What do you do when you don't even know the next step? So you got this kind of, jerk who's like, yeah, they're not going to buy it because of your body type and this, that, and the other thing. You're like,
yeah,
yeah, you're wrong, motherfucker.
yeah.
But what do you do next?
And so the next right step, the next thing that feels right when you can't even see how the heck
How
it's
how
going
do
to
you
work
even
out.
determine what the next right step is?
Yeah, you just get, for me, I just get still. I pray,
Yep.
you know that.
Yep.
I pray. And but whether for you, listening, it's prayer or it's the universe or your
Mm.
intuition, when you get still, all you can do is try to listen. Right. And try to live that answer, whatever it is, and take that next right step. And I just had this knowing I was supposed to keep going. And even when it didn't make sense. And I remember crying myself to sleep. I remember writing in my journal, know your why, then fly, girl, fly. And
Mm.
I read those words every day till I didn't need the reminder. I would Google stories of people that had gone through thousands of rejections who no one would know that they went through them because they're so successful today. And I just kept trying to sort of build this toolbox of things I could lean on. But
And how did QVC come about?
oh,
Because
yeah.
you built It Cosmetics and it became, because of you, the most successful beauty brand on all of QVC. You did over
Yeah.
1,000 appearances.
Yeah.
So how did you even get onto QVC? Because that in and of itself is no small feat.
Yeah, well, their head guy of beauty, who's like a legend, had said no to me many times. No, you're not the right fit. And I happened to be at this big beauty expo
And was this before or after this guy was like, no, we're not investing?
after.
After?
After,
So she has now gotten 3 years of no's.
yeah,
They're almost out of money. Her intuition is knowing that she's going to fly, girl, fly. So she is still showing up to a beauty expo
yeah,
where I want you to understand, in the business world, it's like going to a convention where everybody that you have ever fooled around with, who has then broken up with you, is attending. So everybody that has said no to
yes,
her,
yes,
she walks in and it's like, oh, here's this chick again, the it chick, right?
yep,
The
yep.
it cosmetics person that has been sending me the stuff and calling me, and we have told her no, do not make eye contact. So you are
I
now
love
at this thing.
This describes it exactly. Everyone you
Yes.
fooled around with, who broke up with you, and they're like, "Oh, don't make eye contact."
Yeah, oh
it's
God,
that.
this chick again with the skin, okay.
Yep.
So you're at this thing. You've been
Yes.
told no by the big person. It's been 3 years, so we're talking like 2011, 2012-ish. What do you do?
So you get this 3-foot table, right? It's a huge convention. There's 6,000 women at this convention.
Wow.
They're walking up and down, and it's every beauty brand in the world.
Are they
and
buying it for their stores or?
No, so what it is, it was this big cosmetic executive women awards show.
Okay.
And why you're there is you get a 3-foot table, you're demonstrating your product. You're hoping that someone who walks by either wants to carry your product in their stores,
Mhm.
or all the press is there. They
Right.
cover your product, or there's also, you can win some big award. So I'm there and then all the brands you can imagine, right, are there. And there's 6,000 women walking. And when I got there, I saw QVC had this huge booth in the background, and you're not allowed to leave your table, right? And I couldn't afford to get kicked out. But I just kept having this feeling like, okay, I've called them a million times. They've told me no forever, but I've never like met anyone in person, right? So I kept trying to sneak away from my table. And every time I got over there, the buyers would be mobbed with people.
Mm.
I eventually got over there, made my way to one of the buyers, introduced myself, poured my heart out. Like I remember sweat just dripping through my clothes because I was freaking out, down to no money.
Yeah.
I'll cut a real long story short, but she gave me her card. It's like when someone says, "Oh, DM me on Instagram." You don't know if they really
Right.
mean it. Then you're on your Instagram checking your DMs, and you're like, "Oh, they still haven't replied." And I thought, is that what it's going to be like? But she actually meant it. And I flew out, had a meeting with her. We got a yes, my first big yes, for one shot on QVC. And what it meant, Mel, was I was going to get this 10-minute segment live on the air, live in front of 100 million homes. And I either had to sell enough product to hit their sales goal
Yep.
or not come back. We were only doing 1 to 2 orders a day on our website.
Okay.
And
1 to 2 orders a day, everybody.
Yep.
After
Yep.
almost
3 years.
3 years of
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
This
And
is
barely
like,
keeping the lights on.
and so now you get this, you get your shot.
I
Like
get
there are
my
those
shot.
moments in life,
Yes.
you're at bat,
Yep.
and you got to be ready for those.
Yeah.
And so put us right there with you. What happened?
Yeah. What happened was I was about to learn one of the greatest life lessons I've ever learned to this day. And here's what I mean by that. So I found out I get one shot, and then I learn it's consignment, which means so first of all, I had to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer in this 10-minute window to hit their sales goal or not come back, which was about like $130,000 or $140,000 of product in a 10-minute window.
I also want to point out to everybody that's 10 years of sales on her website at the current amount. So in 10 minutes, everybody,
Yeah.
she on live television
Yeah.
has to move 10 years worth of volume she was selling on her website at that time.
In one shot. Like
In one shot. And she'd never done this before. I realize you were a television anchor, but this is a totally different thing.
Well, QVC, it's unlike stores where you can walk in and there's thousands of products in one space. Their 1 minute of airtime can get one product. So you're competing with the volume of like Apple iPhone or Dyson vacuum. You have to hit these high sales goals.
Yeah.
And what I quickly learned was the offer was consignment, which meant I wasn't guaranteed to be paid for it. I had to figure out how to get a loan to cover the cost of manufacturing 6,000 units of product, shipping it in, going through legal, going through QC, going through all of it. And then I learned if I go on air and it doesn't sell, I have to take it all back
Oh my God.
and therefore go out of business, right? So you should never, ever, ever accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose, ever. But at this point, it was like, I don't know what
This
else
is
to
it.
do.
This is the shot.
This is it. And so here's what happened. We went to 22 banks that all said no, and they probably should have. The 23rd bank, which was California Bank and Trust, and gave us a loan that covered our very first purchase order and a little bit more. So I took the little bit more. We hired third-party consultants. I'm like, I'm going all in. I want to do the best 10 minutes I
Yeah.
could possibly do. I want to have no regrets. And they all told me the same thing,
Which is?
if you want a chance at making it, here's what you need to do. You need to use this type of model to demonstrate your product, which is flawless skin, early 20s, all the same skin tone. And I'm like, okay, but that's inauthentic. That's not why I'm building this brand. I'm like, what if I put models in their 70s and then and someone with hyperpigmentation and someone with acne and what if I take my own makeup off on national TV and I could prove live how the product works? And they were mortified. And here's the thing, Mel, they wanted me to win. Like they were giving me the best advice that they know how. And
This had never been done. So is this 2011?
This is 2010. Yeah,
So
end of
2010, everybody.
Mhm.
So this was not something people did. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about the person who changed the industry
Mm.
right here. And this is the moment you're hearing it. And everybody that were the quote experts
Yeah.
were saying no. And this goes back to one of the major takeaways that you were learning from our professor of purpose, Jamie Kern Lima. And that is there's a huge difference between a no and a knowing.
Yeah.
And if
Huge.
you're the only you that will ever exist, your knowing is the unique difference that you're going to make in this world. And in
Yes.
this moment, with one shot to go, everything on the line, a loan from one out of 23 banks that was willing, she said, no way to the freaking experts. And she listened to her knowing. So when you walked into QVC with normal human beings, no flawless
Yeah.
models, no one with perfect skin, all
Yeah.
ages, all body types.
Yep. Yep.
Did people say, wait, you can't take them on the air? Or was there any, like, were people like, oh, she's got, this is going to be terrible? Like, what was that like when you walked in? Did they even know you were going to take your makeup off?
I let them know I wanted to, and QVC was great, Here's the thing about QVC is, like, they want everyone to be their authentic selves. It's just
Yep.
this has never been done this way before,
Okay.
and I wish I could say it was easy for me to just go, "I'm just gonna go with my knowing," but the truth is I flew out there a week early, Mel. I sat in a rental car in the parking lot, cried every day. I actually second-guessed myself. I'm like, "If I do it, maybe I'll do it their way first, then I'll make money, then I'll do it my way." Uh, but I know that, authenticity, you can't fake authenticity. And authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success. But what I do know is inauthenticity guarantees failure every time.
Okay, everybody stop. The professor classes in session. Did you hear that? That inauthenticity, being fake, trying to do something everybody else's way, because that's just, you're too insecure to do it your way.
Yeah.
That never guarantees success.
Yeah.
Authenticity, your knowing, your special spin on things.
Yeah.
That is the pathway to purpose and success.
Yeah.
There is no other way.
Yep.
And so after a week of crying in your rental car in the parking lot at QVC, you were like, I'm going with the knowing.
I'm going with the knowing.
And so tell us about that first appearance. You're standing there on a television set. There's
Yep.
a bazillion cameras. The lights are bright.
Yeah.
You got your models there.
Yeah.
You're taking the risk of your lifetime on live television in front of 100 million homes.
Yes.
You are doing something that has never been done on television before.
Yeah, I remember literally I wore 2 pairs of Spanx, Mel, not because I cared how I looked, but, like, I was so freaked out, like, my hands were shaking and I was sweating through my clothes, so I had on double Spanx under my dress, and I remember the moment the camera went live, right? And there's a big countdown clock on the floor that started at 10 minutes, and by the way, a minute or 2 before I went onto the set, I learned you're not guaranteed your 10 minutes.
Why?
If you are a minute or 2 into your cell and you're not hitting numbers, they know by the second. Your clock, you might think you have 8 minutes still to go, and your clock will jump to 1 or jump to 2 minutes left.
Because your product's a flop.
Yep, exactly.
And you're a flop.
And-
So you literally are racing against the clock to be successful out of the gate. So what did you do to, like, hook everybody? Did you take your makeup off right away? Did you, like, what did you do?
So I first of all, I go out of the, I go live. I remember it was like 9:59, 9:58, 9, and I'm like, and I remember I had practiced in my bathroom mirror, right? So many times. If I had known the high five habit then, I would have been way more confident. But I was practicing in the bathroom mirror this demonstration 1,000,000 times on my wrist, how our concealer doesn't crease and the best 2 selling concealers crease. And I'd done this demonstration like this where I show it and they all start to crease. So I'm holding my wrist up, trying to do this as we go live to show that, but my hand's like this now. And it was never like shaking when I was doing it a million
Meaning
times.
it wouldn't bend, everybody. Like, she
Yeah.
was so
So
anxiety-ridden that she's
Yes.
sweating through her 2 pairs of Spanx,
Yes.
and her wrist will not bend, so she cannot demonstrate that her product won't crease.
Yes, and the host grabbed my wrist and was like, "Thank you, sugar," and she took over. And then I remember my bright red bare-faced before shot coming up on national television. I remember walking over to our models, real women, all shapes, sizes, skin tones, skin challenges, calling them beautiful, meaning it. I remember.
So when did you take your makeup off? When she
So,
grabbed your hand and said, "Thank you, sugar,"
yeah,
did that
she's
wake you
so
up,
sweet.
or were you like,
Mel, I was like out of my body. I was
so
just
did you
praying.
like just then take your makeup off?
Well, they did a whole bare face before shot of me for that show.
Oh,
I've taken it off live a million times
okay.
since. That
Okay.
first show, it was like, yeah, bare face before shot, and then the after. And I remember walking over to them. I remember we were, 6 or 7 minutes in. I didn't know how we were doing, but I knew we weren't cut yet. And then it got down to like a minute left, and the host said, the deep shade's almost gone. The tan shade's almost sold out. And I was like, freaking out. And I remember literally right at the 10-minute mark, this giant sold out sign came up across the screen, and I start crying on national television.
Oh, I love you.
They cut from me and went to like Dyson vacuum or something. And I remember my husband came rushing through the double doors of the studio, and and he's like has his arms up, and I'm just sobbing, and I'm like, real women have spoken, and I'm just like crying, and I thought he was gonna give me a hug or be all excited, and he just looked at me and he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was like, ah! And I just, that one airing, which was September of 2010, became 5 more that year, then 101 the next year. And then I did 250 live shows a year myself, direct live on QVC year after year. So we built the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And the only reason that I share that is because it was years of no, and you're not the right fit. And what I love for anyone listening who needs to hear this is no one can tell you you're not the right fit. No one. And you can get all the no's in the world, but you have your knowing. And by the way, I believe this, Mel. I believe even when you trust your knowing and then it seems like it was wrong and things don't go your way over and over and over. Like I look back at those moments, right? I really wanted that investor to invest in us. Thank God he didn't.
Oh
When
my
I
God.
say everything's happening for us, what I mean is like, I was so desperate that if he would have invested in us then, I probably would have given him the majority of the company for probably
Right.
almost no money,
Right.
right? By the time, many years, 6 years later, after that day, 6 years later, when L'Oreal bought this little company I started in my living room for $1.2 billion cash, it was still, I was the largest shareholder. Paulo and I were the largest shareholders. And I look back and it's like, oh gosh, thank God all the no's happened when they did, even when they sucked, even when it felt like it wasn't fair. And I can look at that in many scenarios. Sometimes we don't have some big positive outcome, but we learn a purpose through a no.
Right.
Right? We learn a calling through a no. We learn a lesson. We build strength. We build resiliency. We appreciate the beautiful moments so much more when we've gone through the tough ones.
So have you ever seen that investor since?
I have not seen him. The day that
Of course, I asked the petty question. I'm like, have you ever like seen him to like twist the little knife in there? Okay.
So I heard from him one time ever
Mhm.
again, and it was 6 years later, the day that L'Oreal announced the deal. So because they're a public company, they announced, that they had acquired It Cosmetics, made me the first woman to hold a CEO title of a brand in their 107-year history. They did the big press release. So
That's kind of surprising. 107 years, L'Oreal, a makeup company. It took them that long to have the first female CEO of a brand.
I hope they have many more now. That is my prayer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were the trailblazer there too.
It's been, so many things. It's been a journey. And here's the thing, Mel, it was another woman inside L'Oreal. It was Carol Hamilton, who was head of luxury for North America. She'd been there, 30 plus years, and she championed for me to keep my CEO title, all the things. Like it was another woman saying, "Oh," and it's funny because I actually think she should have been the first woman. You know what I mean? And I think again, there's an example, by the way, of I believe, I'm not going to speak for her. I believe she knows. This is my opinion. I think she probably knows she should be the first female CEO. But look how she used what she went through to then, boom, be of purpose and of service and help make sure that I kept my CEO title. Everything we go through. But so they announced it, right? So all of a sudden it was homepage of the Wall Street Journal, the press everywhere. And that was the first time and only time since that I heard from that potential investor.
And what did he say?
He said, "Congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I was wrong." is what he said, and wished me the best of luck. And
That's a big
so
deal to admit you're wrong.
it is. And so when you speak about petty, so what I did say to him was thank you. But what I wanted to say, like,
What did you want to say?
so in that moment, here's what I thought about. I thought about, do you remember the movie Pretty Woman where like she goes in the store and they wouldn't help her? And then she goes back. Remember when she goes back?
Yes.
So I wanted to say to him, big mistake. Huge, huge. I could give you 1.2 billion reasons why it was a huge mistake. But I didn't. I wouldn't have wanted to be him in that situation. We probably would have been one of the most successful investments in his firm's history, And so, listen, it wasn't I always say rejection is God's protection.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.